Welcome everyone to the 515 Sports Pod. I'm your host, Spencer Schultz. Alongside me, Aaron Hickman, Stefan Stockwell. So our first episode, we'll be talking a lot of sports today and dropping weekly episodes. To start things off, we're going to begin with something that we'll do on a weekly basis, which is talking out their ass. Basically, we'll call out some blasphemous takes throughout sports. To begin, we've got Aaron. He'll start with the Matt Campbell, Nebraska, quote-unquote, rumors.
All right, so I don't know if there's like a specific person that you can pinpoint on this talking out of their ass. It's more like an entire fan base. And I guess all the people like from the big sports media that have just been like cheering for Matt Campbell to leave for years now. So I actually live in Nebraska, and I was at a sub shop the other day getting some lunch, and there's these like 4 or 5 guys sitting around a table. They're all, Husker fans. A couple of them were wearing like Husker hats, and yeah, Campbell to Nebraska is a done deal. He's been trying to get out of Iowa State and everything, and it's just like the arrogance of the whole fan base. Like they're all just stuck in the 90s still. Nebraska is not a desirable situation if you're at another Power 5 school on the same level as Iowa State. There might be some lower level Power 5 schools that going to Nebraska would actually be a jump up. But I was actually listening to a podcast that had Alan Lazard on it like a couple weeks ago. And he said like, there's the public stuff that Matt Campbell has turned down, like the NFL and college stuff that we know he's turned down. And there's like way more than that we don't know about. And like Nebraska, if he's turning down like NFL jobs that have been better situations than Nebraska, there's no way he's going to Nebraska. And I think anyone who is convincing themselves that he is, they're just, stuck in the 90s. They think it's this, the Nebraska in their prime, but it's not.
Yeah, I mean, if he was turning down last offseason, what we heard rumors about Notre Dame, LSU, heck, Oklahoma when Lincoln Riley left for a little bit, and he turned all those down, like all 3 of those jobs I just listed are way better jobs than Nebraska, especially with like USC now joining the Big Ten. Like Nebraska falls even further down the totem pole in the Big Ten West, which is already a joke.
Yeah, I think at this point, Iowa State's it's a better program for a coach, I think, at this point than Nebraska, especially because Oklahoma and Texas leaving actually benefits Iowa State. I think just because Campbell will have an even better shot on an annual basis now to win the Big 12. I mean, I guess there's Baylor and Oklahoma State up top, but it'll be, I think, wide open every year. Next, we got one more talking out their ass, and it has to do with Colin Cowherd. Fox Sports kind of going over the line after the injury to Trey Lance last week. Stefan, what do you think about it?
Yeah, on the screen is the tweet that we're talking about, with the video of him blasting Trey Lance already, and then the response from the fans. I mean, it's kind of funny that everyone knows about the behind-the-scenes stuff with Lance and his daughter and them going at him, which is quite funny. But it's sad on Cowherd's part that he's letting the bias affect his takes. I mean, there's pretty night and day obvious bias in there. When he was with his daughter, all he did was ever hype him up, going through the draft process and making him sound like the clear-cut number 1 pick in his mind. And then, or outside of Trevor Lawrence, he was the clear-cut QB2, I should say. And then now that he's not dating his daughter, it's like his mindset's flipped, which is just like, dude, you're like one of the major sports head figures. Like that bias, you should know better than to not let it creep into your takes.
Yeah. So first I want to say that I don't think this is the first time, or I don't think this is the last time Colin Cowherd is going to be on talking out their ass. He's like one of the poster boys for it. He's really wishy-washy with his takes on a lot of people. And with a lot of people, it's obviously personal. Like I'm not even the biggest Baker Mayfield fan, but like the Baker Mayfield stuff is clearly personal. Trey Lance now is clearly personal, and it's just a really bad look for him, but he continues to do it. But yeah, so like the first thing he says is like you feel bad for Trey Lance, but the team is clearly better with Jimmy G. And he like defended himself by saying, he didn't break his neck, he broke his ankle, and just saying all these things that like you said, Stefan, he was hyping him up during the draft. I think he even had an IG story or a Twitter story when Trey Lance was in the green room, like waiting to get drafted, or maybe he had been drafted, like, let's go, like this is my favorite time of the year. And then now he's just crapping all over him. It's just a really bad look for him. And I just find it all weird how he's like the anti-stereotypical dad. Cause like most dads do not love a guy when he's with their daughter. And he like loved the guy when he's with his daughter. And now, taking cheap shots at him when he's down and everything. Never been the biggest Colin Cowherd fan, and this is just the latest episode in that for me.
Yeah, certainly not a surprise for me. As you said, he'll be a poster boy for this segment moving forward. The other poster boy, I hope we don't even give him attention. The guy that sits across from Shannon Sharp. I'm not going to mention his name. But with that, let's move into our top storylines this week in sports. We're going to start off with the NFL. Just 2 weeks into the season, Tua Tagovailoa and the Miami Dolphins have looked pretty good. Jalen Hurts and the Eagles have looked really good as well. So, Aaron, I'll start off with you. Is Tua legit? Is Hurts' improvement legit? How much of it is overblown?
So Tua played really well against the Patriots. I don't read too much into that one just because I think the Patriots are like very mid. But that Ravens game was an attention grabber. Like the stats pop off the page. Over 400 yards, I think like close to 500 yards, 6 touchdowns. He did have 2 picks, but when you're airing it out that much, you can live with 2 picks. Comeback win. He's completing 71% of his passes this season. And I know a big thing with him was the deep ball. He was the worst starting quarterback in the NFL last year on the deep ball. So far, that Hill connection it's looking all right. He's been short on a couple of them, but I guess I'm not willing to say after just 2 games that he's like legit and a top like 3 quarterback in the NFL that he is right now on paper. But he is putting people on notice. And I will admit that I fully have had my doubts about Tua. But so far, he's got a really good thing with Waddle and Hill. And I am curious to see if he continues. And he definitely is shutting some people up. It just will come down to how the rest of the season goes. On the Hurts side of things, he's pretty good. I'm not willing to say that he's like MVP Lamar Jackson yet. There's a lot of people saying that he's in the thick of the MVP conversation. We'll see. I'm kind of chill on that right now. But he is a serious dual threat. He has the best receiver he's ever had in A.J. Brown. He's completing just under 70% of his passes, which is nearly 10 points up from last year and 20 points up from the year before. I like his game, and I think he's steadily improving. And I think with Tua and Hurts, it really just comes down to, can they continue this for more than, like a 2 or 3 game stretch early on in the season?
So building off your Hurts, I'm all in on Hurts. I'm not sure he's the MVP, but I'm actually all in on the Eagles and Hurts. I think they're clearly the best team in that division in my mind. And I mean, through a couple of weeks, I think I'm still going to take the Rams over them, and I'm going to take the Bucks because I trust Brady and once they get healthy. But I think they're the 3rd best team in the NFC right now, over the Packers, just because I don't think Rodgers has faith in his receivers yet. So I'm all in on Hurts. I think he's going to be very, very good. All he does is just keep getting better. He was, better at Oklahoma than he was at Alabama. He's better this year than he was last year. Like every year, he just constantly gets better. You can tell he works hard. And he has to have that it factor because, I mean, he's won everywhere he's gone as well, which helps. Tua, on the other hand, I'm not fully sold on him yet. Is he better than I would say going into the season that I thought he was going to be? Yes, better than that. But people need to chill on the overreactions. I mean, he threw 6 touchdowns, like he had an insane game, but people forget that Trubisky threw for 400 yards and 6 touchdowns in a game. I mean, any quarterback can have a great game. It doesn't make him a great quarterback. I mean, the last quarterback to throw 4 touchdowns in the fourth quarter was Sage Rosenfeld. Like, come on. Like, it's not like he turned out into anything. So, I mean, people are overreacting. He had a great game, and I'm not going to deny that, but let's chill on the Tua takes in my mind.
Yeah, if you know me, I'm not exactly the biggest Tua fan. And I don't get me wrong, the stats look impressive on that 450-yard game, but let's remember who he's throwing it to. Waddle and Tyreek can both take it to the house on any play. Even the 2 deep balls to Tyreek, I felt like were underthrown. He still got it there, but I feel like a majority of NFL quarterbacks can make those throws. I just don't think he'll become like a top 8, top 10 quarterback, in my opinion. I just don't see him as that. As far as Hurts goes, as you mentioned, Stephanie, he's just improved every year. And with that, people have doubted him every phase of his career. You know, he obviously got benched for Tua, and now things are obviously coming full circle kind of. But then he went to Oklahoma. People had their doubts on him there. People really doubted him in the NFL the first few years, saying the Eagles should draft another quarterback and such. He fell in the draft as well. I like Hurts a lot. I think he'll be a top 10 quarterback after this year. As one of you mentioned, A.J. Brown, best receiver he's ever played with. Eagles are legit for sure. But I think moving forward, between the two, I'd definitely take Hurts. I think the Dolphins have just done a great job, I guess, setting up the perfect team around Tua. They know he can't throw the ball deep, so they got guys who can catch it underneath and take it to the house on any play.
How do you guys think Logic is doing so far as the Dolphins head coach?
Who's that? Logic? I thought he would do good. I thought he would actually do pretty solid. He brings a completely different mind to the Dolphins, something they needed, I think, after the years of obviously Gase. Flores was more defensive minded. I think they needed an offensive mind like that. So I think he'll actually be a good coach for them.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's going to be a good coach. Honestly, his offense and those weapons, I think, are going to make Tua look a lot better, like you said. So I think it honestly could be a downfall. I mean, it's tough to say, but I think they got to recognize that it's more the system and the weapons that Tua is going to hit the ceiling, and like he's not going to be good enough to go beat Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes on the road in the playoffs. But I think McDaniel and those weapons are going to be able to get them into the playoffs. And hopefully they recognize that if they want to win a Super Bowl, they probably got to move off Tua.
This meeting is being recorded.
Moving on, but staying in the NFL through 2 weeks, still a bit early, but it looks like there's 2 clear best teams in the NFL, head and shoulders above everyone else, both in the AFC, unless one of you guys would disagree. But Bills and Chiefs have looked far and away like the 2 best teams. So, Stefan, which one do you think is better, the Chiefs or the Bills?
The Bills. I mean, it's tough to say. Obviously, they both look really good. Chiefs probably have better wins, at Arizona, and then the Chargers at home compared to the Titans and at the Rams, which are still solid wins. But the edge for me is the Bills defense. Bills defense looks like it's arguably the best in the league, especially with the addition of Von Miller. They don't even have Tre'Davious White back yet. So they're going to go to another level. I mean, obviously they lost a corner, hopefully he's okay after getting stretchered off Monday night. But I mean, they're going to add their top corner here in Tre'Davious White in a couple weeks, and they've given up 17 points through 2 weeks to an offense last year that was good enough to win a Super Bowl and put up records, and then an offense that had Derrick Henry, who his last fully healthy season he ran for 2,000 yards. So that defense looks really, really good, and to me, that's the edge because both quarterbacks and both offenses are absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm agreeing for the same reason. The defense, and I'll also say, I mean, we'll find out for sure in a few weeks when they do play each other. But if they played each other right now, I'm taking the Bills. They've been insanely dominant in both games, and really, although the Chiefs have looked really good, when I've watched the Bills, it's looked like effortless. Like, I know it's early season and teams are still getting their footing, but they've looked like they're on easy mode against the Rams and the Titans, which verdict is still out on the Titans. Rams kind of just played really bad in their first game, but it's still the Rams. They still have plenty of weapons and plenty of things you have to worry about. And the defense just completely locked them down. The Chiefs have had a close one against the Chargers, and the Chargers are good, but I don't think they've made everything look like varsity playing JV in the same way that Buffalo has so far this season.
I think the Bills are the better overall team, but I think if it's a playoff matchup, I think I'm still taking the Chiefs. No disrespect to Josh Allen, but I'm just trusting Patrick Mahomes still. I think a matchup would actually partially come down to who gets home field advantage. I think I'd probably pick whoever team plays at home. It's basically a toss-up there. I thought, while I understand your point, Aaron, I was also encouraged that the Chiefs won the game last week because I felt like they were thoroughly outplayed by the Chargers, and they still found a way to get a win. And as we know, great teams still find ways to win when they're not on their A game. So I thought that was encouraging. Obviously, still building some chemistry with some of the receivers. I like their running game more than the Bills too. Clyde Edwards-Helaire looks a lot better this year. So I'm still going to ride with the Chiefs by a slight margin, surprisingly. Just real quick, do you guys think it'll be the next Brady-Manning rivalry for the next 10, 15 years? Or not to that extent?
I don't think anything can ever be to that extent because that's like 2 top 3 quarterbacks of all time. And I mean, we'll see what happens by the end of their careers, but like, I think there's other people who are in that conversation of like, people kind of forget, like, I don't think Lamar Jackson gets enough respect. There's some other quarterbacks like Herbert, and Aaron Rodgers is still around. Like, I feel like there's still enough guys in that conversation where Brady versus Manning was like Brady versus Manning, like the clear top 2 guys. I just don't think it's quite the same situation.
Yeah, I agree with Aaron. Like, it was clearly Brady and Manning, and then there was Big Ben. Big Ben was a really good third, but now, like with Allen and Mahomes, like Aaron said, you know, he brought up Lamar and Herbert, and he didn't bring up Joe Burrow, who went to the Super Bowl last year. And then, I mean, right now it doesn't look good in Denver, but Russ is still, I assume, going to be good for the next couple of years. If they can ever figure it out, that's another team in their division that's in the Chiefs division that just makes it more difficult. I mean, the Dolphins are potentially a great quarterback away. Like, there's so many more young superstars in the AFC alone that I don't think we can ever get to the stage that it was Manning, Brady. I mean, they went to what, 18 out of 21 straight Super Bowls, I think. I think it was Ben went to 2 and Flacco went to 1, or Ben went to 3 and Flacco went to 1. And outside of that, it was those 2 for 20 something years. Like, that's just not going to happen with Allen and Mahomes.
I'm not sure about Allen fully yet, but Mahomes, I think Mahomes is going to end up like top 10 of all time pretty easily. I think he'll make plenty of Super Bowls, and I also think the Chiefs have shown the ability to recuperate their roster over these past few years really well. So that's why I think the Chiefs will be kind of that Patriots force for the next 15 years. Yeah, but that Chiefs-Bills matchup in a few weeks should be hopefully reminiscent of like that Chiefs-Rams regular season game from 3 or 4 years ago. Crazy game.
Or just the Chiefs-Bills playoff game, because
Yeah.
that's one of the greatest playoff games ever.
We'll stick in football, but head to the college side of things. Recently, Nebraska and Arizona State fired their coaches. Nebraska obviously fired Scott Frost. Things didn't go according to plan there. And then Arizona State moves on from Herm Edwards after losing to Eastern Michigan last weekend. You guys got any ideas for some targets that those two teams should be pursuing, in your opinion? I guess it doesn't have to be realistic. Just who would you try and pursue? Aaron, first.
So for Arizona State, I actually think they should contact LeVar Woods, special teams coach for Iowa. If you watch Iowa football, like the fans literally cheer for punts because their offense is that bad, but also their special teams is that good. And LeVar Woods played for the Cardinals. He lived in Arizona. He has an Arizona connection. It's looking like the Hawkeyes are not willing to make changes with the whole Ferentz family business situation there. And Arizona State could be a really good job for LeVar Woods to kind of move on and become a head coach, because I think he is deserving of that. So I don't know if they'll do it, but me personally, I think LeVar Woods is a very good idea for Arizona State. On the Nebraska side of things, we've already ruled out Matt Campbell. I think Lance Leopold, if he were willing to leave Kansas, could be pretty good. He'd be sticking around in the Midwest. What he's done with Kansas is very impressive. They're 3-0 for the first time in over a decade. They could be 4-0 for the first time since, however, I don't even know how long it's been since they've been 4-0. And then Bill O'Brien's name has been thrown around. He could be good going back to the college game. Same with like Matt Rule if he gets fired by the Panthers. But in terms of like a cultural Midwest fit type of guy, I actually think Leopold is the best fit for Nebraska. It's just if he's actually willing to leave Kansas at this point.
So for me, Arizona State, kind of an interesting one. Bobby Petrino, he's at Missouri State. He's turned them into, I think they're a top 5 team at the FCS level now. They just played Arkansas really close last week. They lost by 10. I mean, he's been good everywhere he's gone until he messes up, basically. I mean, he's not the best guy in the world, but
Sounds like Lane Kiffin.
yeah, kind of. Like he always just kind of messes up, does something stupid. But I mean, he made Arkansas. Bobby Petrino, when he was at Arkansas with Darren McFadden, was really good, and then he was the coach there when Lamar won the Heisman at Louisville. Everywhere he goes, he like gets some good talent, and out in the Pac-12, especially with being USC and UCLA here in the next couple of years, I think that could be a really good hire. And then Nebraska, mine is Luke Fickell, head coach, obviously at Cincinnati. I don't know if he's going to be wanting to leave, especially with them, making the move to the Big 12 here soon. So, but they're not a Power 5 yet. And moving from Cincinnati, I think he's kind of maxed out there what he can do. But Nebraska's not what they used to be, but I think he can do more at Nebraska recruiting wise than what he's able to do at Cincinnati. So I think that's an interesting one.
I don't really have any specific targets, I guess, for Arizona State. Maybe go and try and get Gary Patterson out of retirement or something. I think his style offenses would bode well for Arizona State. But I think the appeal of the Arizona State job is a little bit more than people think, just because I think it's only a matter of time before they end up in the Big 12. And I think we can all agree Big 12 is much more competitive than the Pac-12, even with the loss of Oklahoma and Texas. As for Nebraska, I mean, if I'm them, I'm definitely trying my hardest for Campbell. As unrealistic as I think it is, I'm definitely trying my hardest. I think he'd be a great fit staying in the Midwest. Elsewhere, give a little shout out to Will Compton busting with the boys. Maybe not head coach, but maybe defensive coordinator. Come on now. What, Stefan, you don't like that one?
No, dude's never been a coach in his life.
Dude, he would rile up those boys like nothing else, bro. Who's not going to want to come and play for him?
Can he do the X's and O's though? That's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's played in the middle defenses for nearly 10 years now, my fault.
That doesn't mean that you can be a good X's and O's coach though.
That's why you hire an offensive coordinator and a defense coordinator with head coaching experience.
I think Nebraska's got to go safe, and that is not a safe hire.
Well, I don't know if going safe is the answer. I think they got to go for the moon. Staying in college football, though, Georgia jumped Alabama after week 1, after Alabama's close game to Texas. So through a few weeks, Georgia obviously clearing away looks like the best team in college football. Does anyone challenge Georgia this year?
Yeah, Bama's still going to challenge them. I mean, I'm never going to bet against Nick Saban. I think, and they've got arguably the best player in the country in Bryce Young. I mean, he won the Heisman last year. They've got arguably the best defensive player in the country in Will Anderson. Like, the talent's still there. And I'm not going to ever bet against Saban. I mean, they're both going to be in the playoffs, so they're going to have to beat him twice, I think. They're going to both be undefeated going into the SEC championship. Winner's going to get the number 1 overall seed. The other one's going to get the number 3 overall seed. That way they don't match up again in the first round. But I think we're on a collision course to get another Georgia-Bama championship. But I think Bama can definitely beat them one of the games. I don't know if they can beat them both games. But one of the games I definitely think Bama can beat them in.
I agree that we're most likely getting another Bama-Georgia championship game. For Georgia, I mean, they are clearing away the best team so far. The Samford game doesn't really matter, but they've only allowed 10 points combined to Oregon and South Carolina. Oregon, I mean, verdict is kind of still out on them, but they looked pretty good against BYU, and South Carolina is an all right Power 5 team. They're not terrible, not good, but barely allowed any points to them. But I'm still not willing to write off Bama or honestly Ohio State. I don't read too much into that Texas game for Alabama. I think it was just one of those games that both teams really get up for. You can argue that Bama should have won that game by a lot more, especially after Ewers went out. But I think there's a lot more that goes into that game than people maybe realize. And then Ohio State's worst game was against Notre Dame. And Notre Dame hasn't looked very good this season, but it's another one of those games like Bama and Texas where I think both programs just really get up for it. But yeah, overall, Georgia is my favorite to win it all at this point of the season. But Bama, Ohio State, there's a couple other teams that you give shouts to. I think you can't write them off yet.
Yeah, I agree. I think Georgia will definitely be challenged. I mean, I think Alabama will just mature as the season goes on. He's got Bryce Young has a lot of new receivers in that offense, new running back. So they're just going to continue to get better as the season goes on. As you said, Ohio State, they have the offensive firepower to potentially put up points on Georgia. I know they lost Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, but the receivers, they've just recouped once again. Marvin Harrison, Jackson Smith as well. And then you still got C.J. Stroud and Travion Henderson. I think another team, quietly, me and Stefan have talked about them. I hate to admit it, but I think USC, their firepower between Caleb Williams, they got the best receiver in the country, Jordan Addison, and a really good number 2. They got Travis Dye, who was Oregon's running back last year. I think that's a team with the mind of Lincoln Riley that has the offensive firepower to be able to put up points on Georgia's defense. I think they'll make a college football playoff, particularly because they're in the Pac-12. So I think that's another team I'm watching for moving forward the rest of the season. Now let's switch to baseball. Postseason is near. We just got a few weeks left of the regular season. The major debate right now is who's going to win AL MVP, Aaron Judge or Shohei Ohtani. I'll start this one off. No bias at all here, but Aaron Judge should be winning MVP. Don't get me wrong, what Shohei Ohtani is doing is amazing. I don't think we haven't really seen it since Babe Ruth. But we can also say the same about Judge, the season he's having. Obviously almost about to break Roger Maris's AL home runs record. He leads the majors in runs scored, RBIs, homers, on-base percentage, slugging percentage, OPS, and then tied for the lead in the AL with a 316 batting average. He's the only player with a WAR of above 10. Shohei is next. He's got 8.7, and then it's a drop off to 7. So I just think his value. You're on the number 2 seed in the AL. Without him, there's no doubt they wouldn't make the playoffs. Obviously, I think winning does play a role into these arguments sometimes. I think Judge should win it.
Yeah, this is not really a conversation to me. I think it's clearly Aaron Judge this season. What Ohtani does is amazing, and I think it could become like a voter fatigue thing over the years with Ohtani, where people kind of get numb to what he's doing, because what he's doing is insane. But the Yankees are a first place team. I'm not a big believer in like the MVP has to be from like a top team in the league, but the Yankees are in first place. Aaron Judge has a great chance to be the first Triple Crown winner that also hits 60 homers while winning the Triple Crown. Not just in the modern era, like ever. And he's going to break Roger Maris's AL record. And I also think what he's doing is great for baseball, just like Ohtani. Also, maybe you might be able to speak to this better than me, Spencer, but I remember there was a stretch after the All-Star break where the Yankees were just not playing very good baseball, and Aaron Judge like kept them afloat. He was like the one watchable thing about the Yankees during that stretch. And that stretch for me, I mean, now pushing 60 is crazy, but that stretch that he had was like the kind of stretches that MVPs have, where your team is not playing that great, but 1 through 9, you just put the whole lineup on your back. So yeah, I think one thing about the MVP, there's the stats and all the things that you can dive deep into to determine it. But for me, who the MVP is who feels like the MVP. And if someone asks me who the MVP is this season, I'm going to say Aaron Judge. What he's doing is historic, just like what Ohtani did last year. But it's his year, and it's hard to explain for me, but just like the whole feeling around his season, he's just having one of those seasons where you just tip your cap and say that guy's the MVP.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. Judge is, in my mind, I've been telling Spencer for the last month that it's not close. It's clearly Judge. I mean, just the stats are ridiculous. I'm not going to go through them. Obviously, Spencer said the current day stats with what he's leading and that he's potentially going to win the Triple Crown. But like just historically, because people are like, oh, Ohtani's doing something it's never been seen before. Well, Judge is literally doing something that we haven't seen since Babe Ruth. Just like he's leading the league by 20 plus home runs. The last person to do that was Babe Ruth. I don't know for sure because the person hasn't done the stats yet, but so I don't know when the last one to do it, but I guarantee you it was a long time ago. The MLB average OPS is 708. Judge is slugging 707. So his slugging alone is almost the league average OPS. And somebody was looking it up to see if anybody's ever even their slugging's ever been higher than the league average OPS. The only one who I think maybe has a shot is Bonds. But if Bonds didn't do it, then I don't think anybody did it. He's going to break if you don't count steroids, he's going to break the all-time home run record in a season. Like the only people who are going to have more home runs than him in a season will be Sammy Sosa with 66, who took steroids, Mark McGwire, who hit 70, who took steroids, and Barry Bonds, who took steroids with his record-breaking 73. So he's literally having the greatest power season we've ever seen by somebody who did it clean. Like that is, to me, it's just not close. It's clearly Judge, and anybody who says otherwise, I completely disagree with.
Yeah, context is important. When you compare him to other guys, I mean, you can't just, as you said, you have to compare to the guys around the league, and this isn't a juiced ball season. This is a down offensive season. He's got 60 homers heading into Wednesday night. and Kyle Schwartz in second with 40. I mean, he's kept the Yankees offense afloat the whole second half. Buster Olney of ESPN did say, due to kind of the context and comparing it to, I guess, everyone else this season, he said he thinks it's the greatest season of all time, which I think it can be up for debate. And it's not like he's a slouch on defense either. He's really good. And a guy of his size, they actually moved him to center field, which is pretty rare. But he's a good defender too. So I think there's an argument for it for sure. Switch things to golf real quick. No Ryder Cup this year. We got the President's Cup, so not nearly as competitive of an event, but it'll be the last event for a few months that we see the big names, particularly the American names: Justin Thomas, Xander Schauffele, Scotty Scheffler, Max Homa, Jordan Spieth, all those guys. What are you guys looking for, I guess, this week? Obviously, U.S. are massive favorites. You're just basically expecting U.S. to win, but what are you looking for?
I'm looking at the emergence of Max Homa. I mean, it's his first team he's been on. Like, he's never been on a Ryder Cup or a President's Cup team. I mean, we always talk about how we think he's like a young mind, but he's 30. But I mean, he's just kind of entering his prime. 5 wins in his last 41 starts now after winning last week, which the only person who's won more in that stretch is Scotty Scheffler, the number 1 player in the world. So I think like his emergence and letting him get experience, because I think he's going to be on the team for years to come, especially with the live guys gone. No more DJ, no more Brooks, no more Bryson. Those spots are going to be open, and I think he's going to take it. So I'm interested to see how he does in the team atmosphere. I think he's going to thrive. Seems like a fun dude that guys love to be around. I mean, his Twitter presence alone is worth the follow. I'm really excited to watch him play. And then I'm also excited to see Kisner back on his second team. He's just a match play demon. He's won and took second the last 3 years at WGC match play. So I think the adding of him to this team as well will make this like not really that close. I'm hoping it can kind of be competitive, but at the same point, I want the U.S. to win. But it'd be cool going into Sunday morning before the NFL starts if there's some like competitive matches that kind of mean something on the line to watch.
Yeah, so we've all said like the U.S. is going to dominate this. That's what I think. But I'm also pretty sure we're all going to talk about Max Homa, because one of the pluses of some of those live guys being gone is that you get to see some new faces like Max Homa. Some of those like really marketable, like Max Homa's a really marketable guy. Great Twitter game, like you said, Stefan. And it's cool that he's going to get his shot. This is not like the Ryder Cup where, the international teams doesn't have the same star power. Just Rory alone makes the Ryder Cup so much fun on both sides of things. But it's cool to see like Cantlay and Schauffele teaming up again. They were really good in the Ryder Cup. JT and Spieth really let their personalities show when they play with each other, and I think that's good for the game. But yeah, I mean, I'm a golf fan, so I'm gonna watch it just because I like watching good golf. But it's definitely not gonna live up to what the Ryder Cup was, the slaughter by the water. That was just really fun to watch.
Yeah, other than tuning in to watch my favorite, Justin Thomas, definitely we'll be watching Max Homa as well. I agree with Stefan. I think he'll be at least on the President's Cup team for years, just in the fact that he's a good quote unquote locker room presence. It seems like everyone gets along with him. Funny guy. What else am I looking for? I'd say just someone to emerge from each team. I mean, last year, you look in the Ryder Cup, Scotty Scheffler really surprised people by upsetting John Rahm. At the time, it was a major shock, and he just ran with that confidence into the season. And now we all see him as a top 5 golfer. And before the Ryder Cup, we really didn't know about him at all. So perhaps looking for someone to maybe like a Cam Young that really shines in this tournament and builds off that confidence moving forward. And then obviously on the European side, as you said, Stefan, I hope it's competitive, and I hope some of those guys do break out. You know, it'd be good for the tour to kind of replenish some of that depth lost to the Live Tour. So yeah, but as stated before, I don't think it'll be very close. So let's transition into our weekly NFL picks. This week we're going to do 4 games. We've got the Packers, Buccaneers, Rams, Cardinals, Bills, Dolphins, and 49ers, Broncos. Start with the Packers, Bucks. Stefan's putting our picks here on the screen. I'll start off with Packers, Bucks. I think this is an interesting game because I think the Packers and Bucks have both looked underwhelming thus far. Obviously, Brady took that leave of absence right before the regular season, and he's obviously still dealing with something. I mean, it's rumored a divorce. I'd say it's probably that. But aside from that, their whole offense is hurt. Last week, Fournette, Godwin, Evans, Perriman, both their tackles were all on the injury report. So they just got to get healthy, first of all. That's why I'm picking the Packers in this game. And Packers always seemingly start slow. They always have a game or two where they look very uninspiring. I just think Rodgers will continue to build chemistry. He got his best receiver back last week, Allen Lazard, Iowa State legend. So I think that'll help. And then I think he utilizes Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon in the pass game really well. So, yeah, I'm not too concerned about the wide receivers there.
Yeah, I'm also taking the Packers in that one. This is like their second or third year in a row now where they've just played really bad in game 1 of the season. It's just become a Packers thing. But by the end of the season, they're NFC Championship contenders. I think that Rodgers is going to be on a mission this year. There's always this weird narrative around Rodgers that he's kind of like apathetic or doesn't maybe care as much. But I think under that kind of easygoing surface he knows that this could be like a legacy year for him, especially with the receiving core that he has and how the Packers kind of ask him to perform miracles year after year. But getting Lazard back really does help. And the whole vibe around the Buccaneers, even though they are good still, it's just like weird this year. And Mike Evans is going to be suspended for that one. And I also am going to get on my soapbox for a second about the whole Brady thing. Like, he doesn't look well. And like people, I'm going to bring up like Chadwick Boseman, because people said a lot of stuff about Chadwick Boseman too, like made a lot of jokes about that. And then next thing you know, he passed away from cancer. And I'm not saying that's going on with Brady per se. I'm just saying that like you never know what someone is going through. And like Brady is an older guy. He's 45. And life just doesn't seem to be going very well for him. We don't really know what he's going through off the football field. So some of the jokes that are being made at his expense, I think, are some things that people could really regret saying if we kind of learn more about what's going on in his personal life down the road. But that's my spiel. I'm taking the Packers in that one.
So I'm the only one who took the Bucks. And to me, it was more the defensive pick. The Bucks defense has looked insanely good to start the year. They've only given up 1 touchdown. It was garbage time last week. And for whatever reason, Brady owns Aaron Rodgers. He doesn't lose to him. I like the Bucks at home. Good offense or good defense. And Brady and that offense makes enough plays to win I think a low scoring game, which is kind of surprising to say with those 2 quarterbacks.
We got 3 more games. We'll wrap it up here quickly. Rams, Cardinals. You guys got anything to say on that? We all got the Rams in that one. Cardinals with a miracle of a win last week at home or in Las Vegas. Might revitalize them a little bit. Anything to say on that one?
I just don't think the Cardinals are really that great of a team. we'll see what they can do in the NFC West this year. I just think the Rams have a lot more firepower. I trust Stafford a little bit more in this one than I trust Kyler Murray, just because he's pretty up and down lately. So Rams were the easy pick for me.
Yeah, really what he said. Just more faith in the Rams offense than the Cardinals offense.
Yeah, when they get D-Hop back, I think it'll help a ton, especially with how AJ Green looked towards the end of that game last week. Dropped 2 pretty easy catches, and I think they need to move on from Cliff Kingsbury. I don't know how he got the job in the first place, but I think he'll be fired after the year. Bills-Dolphins, surprisingly, a very good AFC East matchup. We all picked the Bills there as well. What do the Dolphins have to do in order to win, Stefan?
Slow down the Bills offense and not turn the ball over. Those 2 things. If they give Allen extra possessions, they're not going to win. And I mean, the Bills didn't punt this season till the second half of their second game. So they got to figure out a way to slow down that offense. They just gave up 38 to the Ravens. And I think the Bills offense is even better. So they got to figure it out defensively for them to have a shot this week.
Yeah, I think the Dolphins got to play like another AFC East team. They got to play some prime Belichick football, possession football, keep the ball out of Josh Allen's hands, win the last 4 minutes of the first half, win the first 4 minutes of the second half. And I think they'll need a sizable time of possession advantage if they're going to pull this one off.
Last one, 49ers, Broncos, Sunday Night Football. Stefan, obviously, no bias there, picked the Broncos. I picked 49ers. I think Jimmy G, I mean, he's not a great quarterback by any means, but, I mean, he led them to the Super Bowl 2 years ago. I think we'll be just fine with Jimmy G. I know he's not as much of Shanahan's style as Lance is, but I think they'll do fine, and they'll rely on that defense heavily, and I think it's the worst defense for Russ to face right now while he's struggling.
Yeah, a little bit of bias in this pick, obviously, being a Bronco fan, but the defense is still really good. Obviously, this will be the best offense they faced, but they avoided some bad injury luck. Looks like Surtain and Judy are going to play. It's early in the week, but that's kind of the forecast from what I've been able to see from the reporters I follow, which is big. And Hackett has to figure it out eventually, right? Like he's not going to make another bonehead mistake. I would hope. I'm hoping as a fan that he's not going to, and the offense has to click at some point. I mean, they're literally averaging the most yards per drive in the league. They just can't finish in the red zone. They're averaging 60 yards a drive, so they move the ball well, better than any team in the league, actually. But they just can't finish. They're 0 for 5 in the red zone. I think they get it done this week in the red zone and pull it out a close one.
Yeah, I didn't think too hard about this pick. I do think the Broncos hit their stride eventually, especially with Russ at the helm. He's too good of a quarterback, especially with the pieces around him, for them to not hit their stride. I just don't think this week against the 49ers is when they do it. But maybe with Russ yelling run or pass from the sideline, they'll be able to pull it off.
So corny.
Transitioning into our final segment, we'll be doing this one weekly. We got our Throwback Legend of the Week. I picked it this week. You guys got any other ideas before I say mine out?
No, we're rocking with you.
Yep, you got it this week.
Let's see if any of you guys know how to pronounce it. But TJ Houshmandzadeh. I know Aaron's familiar with him. He played for the Jets towards the tail end of his career. He was kind of second fiddle to Chad Ochocinco there in those years in Cincinnati with Carson Palmer at quarterback. Best year came in 2007. It was his lone Pro Bowl year. 112 catches, 1143 yards, 12 touchdowns. It was his only double-digit touchdown season. Only ended up with 2 1,000-yard seasons in his career. When we were talking about Throwback Legend of the Week earlier, that was the first name that came to mind. Maybe it was because of the long name, but any thoughts on Houshmandzadeh? Stock, I got to hear you say it.
TJ Houshmandzadeh. I mean, come on. It's not awful. No, throwback legend. I mean, gets overshadowed because of Ocho Cinco there, but he was really good for a long time. You could make a case during that time that they were the best wide receiver duo in the league. Them, or you had the Fitzgerald and Anquan Bolden duo in Phoenix. Or in Arizona, geez. But yeah, really good throwback. Doesn't get talked about much, but he was actually a really good player.
Yeah, really good pairing with another throwback legend in Chad Ochocinco. For me, he's just a very nostalgic player because he takes me back to like a different time in the NFL when I was a kid. Like when I was really falling in love with the NFL. That's when TJ Houshmandzadeh was in his prime. And I think that's probably why we all have good things to say about Houshmandzadeh, because he's associated with that period in the league.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys, that'll do it for our first episode of the 515 Sports Pod with me, Spencer Schultz, Stefan Stockwell, Aaron Hickman. We'll be back on a weekly basis. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at 515 Sports Pod. See you guys next week.